Greetings, fellow cultivators. Welcome to Autonova. Remember to like and subscribe to support the journey. Now, let's dive into the next chapter of A Will Eternal. Master God Diviner gritted his teeth in hesitation for a moment before continuing. Junior Patriarch. Junior Patriarch, I'm leaving too. If we all stick around here, we'll never solve the problem of being hungry. Look, why don't you? At the sudden realization that everyone was apparently planning to go their own way, Bai Xiaochun shot to his feet. Don't go, guys. You're my Dao protectors. I brought you here with me. What am I supposed to do if you all leave? What was especially terrifying was the realization that the spirit stones the sect had given him were almost all gone. The fact that everyone was leaving at that point was what hurt the most. I brought you here with me. You're supposed to take care of me. Despite his protestations, Song Ke simply snorted coldly, then turned and left. His plan was to go on some missions to earn the resources he needed to take care of himself. Care, Bai Xiaochun called after him. However, Song Ke didn't even look over his shoulder. As for Master God Diviner, he was getting ready to leave too, but Bai Xiaochun reached out and grabbed his arm. Master God Diviner, he said piteously, I won't call you Master Snort anymore, okay? Don't go, Junior Patriarch, I don't have any other choice. Before coming here, none of us had any idea that merely staying alive in the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect would be so difficult. I think I'll go start performing some divinations to get some food to eat. Although his words were chosen well, inside, he was furious, and at the same time, couldn't stop thinking about how much he missed the river-defying sect. Shaking himself out of Bai Xiaochun's grip, he left the spirit abode and was gone in a flash. I can't believe you people. Bai Xiaochun said angrily. As far as he was concerned, Song Ke and Master God Diviner were being completely unreasonable. If they had gone out on their own earlier, it might have been tolerable, but instead, they waited until he ran out of spirit stones to abandon him. Even as Bai Xiaochun stood there fuming, Chen Manyao sighed and stood up. Looking over at Bai Xiaochun, she said, this is my fault for not getting complete information. Junior Patriarch, I'm going to go look for some friends of mine. If destiny will have it, we'll meet again in the Rainbow District. Without giving Bai Xiaochun a chance to respond, she flew out of the spirit abode. Chen Manyao's sudden departure pushed Bai Xiaochun toward the brink of madness. After all, she had come to him to ask to join the party, and now here she was just throwing him to the wayside. Thankfully, he could console himself with the fact that Shu Baosai and Big Fatty Zhang were staying behind. HMPH. Fine, if they want to go, let them go. At least eldest brother and little treasure have some loyalty. Looking over at them, he slapped his chest and said, look you two, don't worry, all. However, that was when Shu Baosai rose awkwardly to his feet. Junior Patriarch, hey, what are you doing? Sit back down. Heart pounding, Bai Xiaochun was just getting ready to physically block Shu Baosai's path, when he noticed the look of determination in his eyes, as well as the tears. Junior Patriarch, he pled, let me go, please. I don't want to die of starvation. Look at me. I'm the weakest of all of us, and I'm already skin and bones. If things keep going like this, I'm going to be the first one to die. Show me mercy, I beg of you. Let me go, please, Junior Patriarch. He even started tugging at Bai Xiaochun's sleeve. The anger faded from Bai Xiaochun's face, and he sighed. All right, everyone has the right to pick their own path. Leave if you want. Many thanks, Junior Patriarch. Eyes filled with gratitude, Shu Baosai fled the spirit abode. As soon as he was outside, he caught sight of Master God Diviner off in the distance. The two of them exchanged a glance, then joined together and headed off into the city, chuckling. Looking quite proud of himself, Master God Diviner produced a chunk of spirit meat from his bag of holding and started munching on it as he said, Song Ke has pretty high ambitions and isn't very flexible. I bet he really did think that he was in a bad position. We're different though. Finally, we're free from the clutches of evil. Shu Baosai hesitated for a moment, then produced a similar chunk of spirit meat. After taking a bite, he said, are you sure this is a good idea though? After all, we're still technically Dao protectors. Clearly, the two of them had quite a collection of resources built up. After all, for the past several days, all of the food they'd been eating had been provided by Bai Xiaochun. Master God Diviner hesitated for a moment. After a bit of thought, he said, there's nothing we can do about that. If we had stayed back there, we would still have gone hungry eventually anyway, what with the Junior Patriarch's way of handling things. Don't worry, let's take care of ourselves first, and then we can meet back up with him when we get to the Rainbow District. After a bit more chatting regarding their plans, the two of them headed off into the city to find their own place to stay. As of this point, the only people left in the spirit abode were Bai Xiaochun and Big Fatty Zhang. Big Fatty Zhang looked at Bai Xiaochun standing there in anger, then sighed and closed his eyes to meditate. Despite Bai Xiaochun's rage, there was nothing he could do about the situation. At least he had Big Fatty Zhang there to accompany him. However, the next day, not even Big Fatty Zhang could take it any longer. When evening fell, he walked over to Bai Xiaochun and said, "Ninth Fatty." Bai Xiaochun instantly started to get nervous. "Eldest brother, are you?" "Ninth Fatty, it's not that your eldest brother doesn't care about you. If things keep going like this, I'm gonna die. I'll go out to perform some spirit enhancements. Don't worry, Ninth Fatty, after I get some money built up, I'll come back and take care of you." Big Fatty Zhang had clearly made his mind up, and Bai Xiaochun didn't say anything to try to change his mind. Big Fatty Zhang clapped Bai Xiaochun on the shoulder, then took a deep breath, his eyes gleaming as if he had accepted a holy mission. With that, he walked out of the spirit abode. Bai Xiaochun was the only person left. As the sun slowly sank down over the horizon, he stood outside the door looking more lonesome than ever. Finally, he let out a long sigh. Gone. They've all gone. Crestfallen, he walked back into the spirit abode and sat down, his hunger growing. What am I supposed to do? I'm so hungry. Considering that night was falling, he finally went out and used some of his dwindling spirit stone savings to buy some more spirit food. Then he looked around at all the red-robed disciples hurrying here and there on various missions. Although some of the missions were dangerous, considering that Bai Xiaochun's cultivation base was in the gold core level, they wouldn't pose any threat to him. However, the rewards for accomplishing such missions were small. Based on his calculations, doing missions to survive would require him to do them almost all day every day. That was mostly because the high level of his cultivation base meant that the drain on his body was even more noticeable. And of course, the missions with bigger rewards were the ones that were more dangerous. Despite putting some thought to it, he couldn't come up with any good ideas. Sighing, he went back to his spirit abode. Back inside, the little turtle finally woke up and stuck his head out of Bai Xiaochun's bag of holding. He looked at Bai Xiaochun suspiciously, clearly wondering why he had been asleep so long. However, Bai Xiaochun wasn't in any mood to pay attention to him. Seeing how he was being ignored, the turtle's suspicions faded, and he disappeared back into the bag of holding. A few more days passed. Bai Xiaochun went out into the city a few times to try to get inspiration for what to do. He completely suppressed his cultivation base, ensuring that no fluctuations whatsoever emerged from him, which also reduced the drain on his body. However, no matter how many ideas he came up with, he found that there were already people in the city using those methods to earn merit points. Trying to compete with them would be pointless. He even tried to find some unique missions at the missions office suited to his style, but there were simply too many disciples there looking for missions. By this point, he knew exactly why all of the people he had seen in the city were always thin and in a hurry, and also had such strange cultivation bases. The pressure weighing down on them on a daily basis created something like an instinct. Because of the interference of the spiritual power, it was impossible to see who was powerful and who was weak. Don't tell me that a majestic gold core cultivator like me is actually going to starve to death, he lamented. He was getting to the point that he was so hungry he couldn't take it. His bag of holding was now completely devoid of spirit stones, and he was almost out of food. Soon, he would have nothing left to eat other than spirit plants. Of course, he had plenty of those, because he was always equipped with numerous ingredients with which to concoct medicine. However, even if he sold them all, the merit points they would earn would vanish just as quickly as his spirit stones. I can't keep going on like this, or I'm going to die. This Starry Sky Tao Polarity sect is just too wicked. I can't believe they treat their disciples so harshly. I'm a gold core expert. I'm an important political hostage. Don't they even care that I'm starving to death? Depressed, he even considered resorting to theft. However, the punishment for theft in the Starry Sky Tao Polarity sect was so severe that he quickly abandoned such thoughts. Alright, I'm out of options. I guess I'm going to have to use my best skill to solve this problem. I'm going to concoct medicine. Even if some disastrous things happen as a result, I don't care. Things are already bad enough as it is. What do I have to be scared of? I'm gonna concoct some sort of medicine that prevents hunger long term. In fact, I already came up with a name for it. Ultra Fasting Aid Pill. Eyes bloodshot, he slapped his bag of holding, producing a pill furnace, as well as some flamestones. Taking a deep breath to calm himself, he devoted all of his thoughts to the Ultra Fasting Aid Pill he wanted to concoct. Some people in the world perform better under more pressure, and Bai Xiaochun was just that type of person. In fact, he was extraordinary even among people like that. The truth was that surviving in this city wasn't as hard as Bai Xiaochun imagined it to be, especially for gold core cultivators. In fact, it was relatively simple. All he had to do was take on a few relatively dangerous missions every once in a while, or do smaller, easier missions on a daily basis. Using either of those methods, it would only take a year or two to save up enough merit points to become a yellow-robed disciple and be promoted to the Rainbow District. Of course, it would require a bit of frugality, but it was nothing undoable. But Bai Xiaochun didn't like danger, and didn't want to do any missions. Only when he was so hungry that he could hardly see straight did the pressure build to the point where he finally exploded with creativity and innovation. For the following 4 days, he didn't rest or sleep. He ate what little food he had left, and even nibbled on some spirit plants, until finally, the pill formula for his ultra-fasting aid pill came to be complete in his mind. My ultra-fasting aid pill will be a concentration of the quintessence of heaven and earth. Upon consuming it, one will receive temporary replenishment, will be relieved from the pressure caused by the draining of ordinary energy, and will even find that the spiritual power inside of their body has become gentler and easier to work with. Bai Xiaochun was trembling with excitement, and although he was now quite gaunt, his eyes were shining brightly. Having completed the ultra-fasting aid pill formula, he immediately began to concoct. 6 hours later, his first batch appeared, and although it only contained 3 pills, the mere odor emanating from them caused Bai Xiaochun's hunger to lessen. Ha ha ha, I really am a genius. It worked. My ultra-fasting aid pill worked. Surging with excitement, he took the 3 pills out of the furnace, and was just about to consume them when he hesitated, and thought back to all the bizarre and strange things which had happened in the past when he had concocted medicine. Maybe it would be better to do some tests. Gritting his teeth, he left his spirit abode, sold a few medicinal plants to get some merit points, and then went and bought a spirit chicken. Back in his spirit abode, he gave one of the ultra-fasting aid pills to the spirit chicken, then carefully watched to see what happened. After a full day passed, he was convinced that nothing had gone wrong, and that the spirit chicken was fine. At that point, his eyes blazed with excitement. Looks like I really did succeed. He threw his head back and laughed uproariously, then went to work on the next batch. Before long, he had several dozen ultra-fasting aid pills. Now that I think about it, it would be a waste for me to consume these pills myself. I actually like spirit food a lot better than medicinal pills. After some thought, he decided to try to sell some of the pills. Filled with anticipation, he left the spirit abode yet again. Instead of trying to sell the pills to one particular shop or another, he went to one of the busiest public squares in the East District of the city, and after spending a bit of time, found a suitable location to set up a vendor's stand. After placing 3 pill bottles onto the stand, each of which containing a single pill, he sent some power from his cultivation base into a jade slip, causing it to send bright, multicolored light shining up into the air above him. Immediately, 4 brightly glowing characters could be seen. Ultra-fasting aid pill. With that, he settled down to wait for customers. It didn't take long. After all, the term, ultra-fasting aid pill, was quite eye-catching. Before long, people began to gather around him. Ultra-fasting aid pill? I've never heard of that medicinal pill before. Considering how things work in Sky City, I almost can't believe this guy dares to sell a fasting aid pill. He's either a con artist or a psycho. HMPH. Fasting aid pills don't do any good here. More and more people gathered and began to discuss the matter, but no one was willing to buy a pill. That was even more so considering that Bai Xiaochun's quoted price was 100 merit points. Bai Xiaochun soon got nervous, and was even starting to consider dropping the price. However, that was when a certain cultivator appeared in the crowd. He was currently gaunt, but considering his height, he had obviously once been very muscular. Furthermore, he had a cold gleam in his eyes, and a murderous aura that anyone could detect. He wasn't alone, either. Walking along next to him was a young boy with a waxen face and listless eyes. As soon as the big man appeared, the gathered crowd went silent, and many of them even backed up a bit. Apparently, they recognized him, and didn't dare to do anything to offend him. Ultra-fasting aid pill? 100 merit points, huh? The big man's eyes narrowed as he looked at one of the pill bottles, then back at Bai Xiaochun. Because of the way that everyone in the city suppressed their cultivation bases, it was impossible for the man to determine Bai Xiaochun's cultivation level. However, based on his judgment, he placed him at foundation establishment or higher. Eyes glittering coldly, he said, "If this thing really works, then it would definitely be worth 100 merit points. But, if it doesn't, then you'll either pay me back tenfold, or I'll teach you a lesson you won't forget for a long time." Before Bai Xiaochun could even react, he reached out, grabbed one of the pill bottles and crushed it, then tossed the medicinal pill to his child. The boy morosely opened his mouth and swallowed the pill. Of course, everyone was watching closely to see what would happen. As for Bai Xiaochun, his expression was the same as ever, but inside, his nervousness was mounting, although it wasn't because of the big man. From what he could tell, the man was only in the great circle of Foundation establishment, and Bai Xiaochun knew that he could stomp the man in a fight even if he were hungrier than he already was. What had him nervous was his uncertainty about how effective the pill would be. As everyone looked on, the boy's expression suddenly flickered. His eyes opened, and he began to shake visibly, causing the audience to crane their necks to see what would happen next. Gradually, the onlookers' eyes began to widen, and then cries of disbelief and shock began to ring out. What's going on? Heavens! I can't believe this ultra-fasting aid pill actually works. How is this possible? As such exclamations continued to fill the air, the young boy's gaunt frame suddenly began to fill in with flesh. Within only a few breaths of time, he was the picture of a healthy boy. He was even a bit chubby. Gasps and cries of astonishment could be heard in all directions. As for the big man who had bought the pill, he was shaking, and his eyes began to shine with shock. Immortal medicine. That's immortal medicine. The man quickly reached out to grab the remaining 2 bottles, but before he could, Bai Xiaochun leveled a cold gaze at him. The man's mind filled with rumbling sounds, and his hand lurched to a halt. As of this moment, a sensation of deadly crisis had filled him, and something inside of him was telling him that if he dared to try to steal the pill bottles, he would be struck dead instantly. I painstakingly concocted these pills with undying wheatgrass, Bai Xiaochun said coolly. It's very expensive. I only offered it up for 100 merit points because I knew that nobody would be interested or even trust that they were real. As of this moment, these pills cost 300 merit points each. The big man took a deep breath and said, fine, 900 merit points for the first pill plus these 2. Without any hesitation, he pulled out a jade slip and transferred 900 merit points to Bai Xiaochun. Then he grabbed the pills and hurried off. Although everyone else in the crowd wished they could have bought the pills, nobody was able to do anything. That was when Bai Xiaochun cleared his throat and produced 3 more bottles from his bag of holding. In the time it takes an incense stick to burn, he sold 30 ultra-fasting aid pills. Only after all of the pills had been snatched up did he put away his vendor's stand, and then stroll off proudly, hands clasped behind his back. HMMMMMPH. Master God Diviner schemed his way out of the group, but little did he know that Bai Xiaochun could casually come up with 9,000 merit points with almost no effort. The sight of so many merit points in his identity medallion filled his heart with complete satisfaction. Right now, I'm a red-robed disciple, which means I have to spend 100,000 merit points to become an orange-robed disciple. However, to leave Sky City and fly up to the Rainbow District, I need to become a yellow-robed disciple, which costs 1 million merit points. That's not very much. Feeling very proud of himself, he rubbed his belly and then hurried to a nearby spirit food restaurant. After buying enough food for 5 people, he began to stuff himself, simultaneously contemplating how wonderful life was. Filled to bursting, he returned to his spirit abode and began to concoct more medicine. As the night wore on, Bai Xiaochun became obsessed with pill concocting in a way that was completely different from before. By the time the sun rose, he had concocted 50 ultra-fasting aid pills, whereupon he hurried out of his spirit abode toward the public square. This time, he had barely set up his vendor stall and put the medicinal pill bottles out before a whole crowd of cultivators had gathered, pushing and shoving in their madness to buy some of the pills. It didn't take long before all 50 of the ultra-fasting aid pills were gone. Bai Xiaochun was completely taken aback. However, after a bit of thought, he realized why the pills sold so quickly. Compared to the outrageously expensive spirit food in the city, the pills were very cheap. Furthermore, they were so effective that no one could possibly be unmoved by them. After some consideration, though, Bai Xiaochun decided not to raise his prices. As far as he was concerned, the inhabitants of the city had things rough as it was, and besides, he was already making a great profit. However, the next day as he was passing by a random shop, he noticed to his astonishment that they had an ultra-fasting aid pill for sale for 3,000 merit points. Upon arriving at the public square, he couldn't even sit down before 8 cultivators rushed over and began fighting over the chance to be first in line. And furthermore, all of them wanted to buy his entire supply of pills. By now, Bai Xiaochun was on guard, and after a bit of observation, came to the realization that these cultivators were all employees of various shops in the East District. Obviously, they wanted to purchase the pills at a low price and then resell them for a profit. Bai Xiaochun was not very pleased at all, and immediately established a new rule governing sales. Each customer could only purchase one pill at the normal price. The second pill would be twice as expensive. The same went for the third pill. However, this new rule wasn't very effective. After all, the cultivators in Sky City were most unscrupulous. Bai Xiaochun simply ignored that, though, and continued selling pills for 7 days. By that point, he had accumulated close to 100,000 merit points. Meanwhile, the matter of the ultra-fasting aid pills in the East District had caused quite a commotion. Many people had heard of them, including certain powerful organizations in the city. There were countless such organizations in Sky City, which were essentially gangs of cultivators. The largest and most powerful of them was the Celestial Sky Society, which controlled nearly 80% of the shops. With that monopoly, and the fact that they were backed by a diva clan, no one ever dared to provoke them. When it came to the East District, there was no single person from the Celestial Sky Society who ran it, but rather, there were 3 of them, all of them famous orange-robed disciples. Currently, they were meeting in a secret location, serious expressions on their faces as they studied an ultra-fasting aid pill. They took turns holding it in their hands and looking at it from all angles. None of them spoke, and a bit of time passed before someone called out greetings from outside of the secret chamber. Standing outside was an old man with a full head of white hair. He was surrounded by a strong medicinal aroma, and as soon as he entered, the 3 orange-robed cultivators rose to their feet and greeting him respectfully. The old man didn't waste any words. Pointing at the ultra-fasting aid pill, he said, "This pill contains 123 different types of medicinal effects. The combination of so many types of effects can lead to infinite variations. I've never seen anything like it in my life. In terms of ingredients, it contains 19 different varieties of medicinal plant, which, when merged together, give rise to those 123 different medicinal effects. If my speculations are correct, a unique concoction method was used to produce the pill. Whoever concocted it might not have overall skill in the Tao of medicine to rival my own, but when it comes to the techniques of mutual augmentation and suppression, he definitely is my superior." This old man had spent several days researching the pill, and had been left completely shaken by what he saw. One of the 3 orange-robed disciples couldn't help but ask, "Is there any way you can reproduce the formula and technique so that we can concoct it ourselves? Apparently you didn't understand what I just said. Let me put it this way. Not only have I never heard of an ultra-fasting aid pill before, even after researching it, I can assure you that the formula is not like anything I've ever seen before. There are some flaws to it, but consuming it won't cause any significant harm. At worst, it might cause some temporary damage to one's vital energy. However, any such damage will quickly be repaired. Furthermore, after consuming the pill, a cultivator will be able to stave off the draining of their energy for about half a month. In the final analysis, I'm convinced that someone recently invented this pill formula. Do you really think that I can simply analyze and reproduce such a powerful, recently invented pill formula? I don't have that level of skill." Eyes shining brightly, the old man continued, "However, what I can do is take an existing pill and possibly split it up into more than one pill. Unfortunately, that would reduce the quality and make the side effects worse." The 3 orange-robed disciples didn't respond. All of them knew that if these pills continued to be concocted and sold to the inhabitants of Sky City, it would have a seriously detrimental effect on the sale of spirit food. In fact, it could even end the industry altogether. Obviously, the Celestial Sky Society had no desire for the status quo to change. If only they could acquire the pill formula, then they would be able to get a handle on the situation, and perhaps even prevent the pill from being concocted. The 3 orange-robed disciples exchanged glances, and then 2 of them turned to the third. "Killing people violates the rules set forth by the Starry Sky Tao Polarity sect," said one of the 2, "so we should avoid that if possible. Even the main headquarters agrees with that." Both of the men clasped hands respectfully. "Therefore, fellow Taoist Joe, would it be possible for you to get in contact with the cultivator selling this pill, and somehow acquire the pill formula? If not, well, I guess we could use the cooperation method." Meanwhile, Bai Xiaochun had been enjoying life for the past 7 days. He was both pleased and shocked at his rapidly growing accumulation of merit points, and had been constantly splurging on the most expensive spirit foods. He had even gone to the magic pavilion to buy a large collection of magical items and defensive treasures. What excited him most was that in Sky City, there were certain shops that sold beast mounts. The most expensive could cost millions of merit points, and even the cheapest went for more than 100,000. Bai Xiaochun immediately fell in love with the idea of having a beast mount. After all, the cultivators he had seen in the city who went around on such mounts were all extraordinary figures. His desire itched in his heart, but unfortunately, he was worried that he couldn't actually afford one. Therefore, he waited a few days until he couldn't hold back anymore, and then spent over 100,000 merit points on a battle mount. To most cultivators in the city, a mount like this would be considered a luxury. It was fully 90 meters long, and looked like a fearsome crocodile. It had 3 eyes, was covered with armor-like scales, and had a cultivation base comparable to the early foundation establishment stage. When Bai Xiaochun sat on the back of the crocodile, he felt extremely grand and imposing. Its growling cry echoed like thunder, and ensured that he was the subject of much envy as he rode it back to his spirit abode. In a few days, I'll pick a new place to stay, he thought. This spirit abode doesn't fit me anymore. I need an immortal's cave. And the best one at that. Even as his eyes sparkled with pride, he realized that there was an orange-robed cultivator waiting for him outside of his spirit abode, hands clasped behind his back. He was flanked by 7 or 8 red-robed disciples, all of whom seemed energetic and ready to fight. In fact, they weren't suppressing their cultivation bases, which ensured that a weighty pressure filled the entire area surrounding the spirit abode. However, even the orange-robed disciple was only in the great circle of foundation establishment. As for the other foundation establishment cultivators, Bai Xiaochun could tell that they wouldn't pose a threat to him at all, so he ignored them. They looked at him, and he looked back at them. As for the orange-robed disciple, as soon as he got a look at Bai Xiaochun's face, his expression turned very serious. Everyone in the city usually suppressed their cultivation bases to the limit. However, as for this orange-robed disciple, with careful scrutiny, he could determine if a person was weaker than him or not. The only people he would be unable to assess would be people who were already in the great circle of foundation establishment or higher. Currently, he couldn't assess Bai Xiaochun at all. However, it didn't occur to him that Bai Xiaochun might be in core formation. That was because, despite how packed Sky City was, there were actually very few core formation cultivators there. After all, with a gold core cultivation base, it would be a relatively simple thing to go on missions and earn the merit points necessary to be promoted to the Rainbow District. Well, this might be a problem, the orange-robed cultivator thought, frowning. Despite having run a background check on Bai Xiaochun, he hadn't found any information about him other than his surname. After a moment, he decided that, considering the level of cultivation base he was dealing with, he shouldn't beat around the bush. The ultra-fasting aid pill was too important, and therefore, the best choice in the situation was to start out by trying to cooperate with its maker. His frown turned into a smile. As Bai Xiaochun neared, the orange-robed disciple clasped hands and bowed. Brother Bai, I presume? I am your humble servant Zhou Dao, a leader of sorts within the Celestial Sky Society. I was hoping to discuss the ultra-fasting aid pill with you. If we cooperate, I think we can make a handsome profit. What do you mean work together? Bai Xiaochun said, looking down at Zhou Dao from his position atop the crocodile. Zhou Dao was not very pleased that Bai Xiaochun hadn't dismounted from the crocodile, but his tone of voice didn't reveal that as he said, your humble servant wishes to purchase the precious pill formula for the ultra-fasting aid pill. Would you be willing to part with it for 100,000 merit points, Brother Bai? It's not for sale, Bai Xiaochun said, rolling his eyes. With that, he flew off of the crocodile, then swished his sleeve, causing it to fly into his spirit beast bag. Just as he was about to step into his spirit abode, Zhou Dao moved to block his way. Brother Bai, if you don't want to sell the formula, that's fine. But would you be willing to let the Celestial Sky Society be the exclusive dealer for your pill? Exclusive dealer? Bai Xiaochun looked at Zhou Dao for a moment. The truth was that going out to sell the pills on his own over the past few days had been a bit troublesome. If this Zhou Dao could do that for him, it would definitely save some effort. The Celestial Sky Society virtually runs Sky City, Zhou Dao said with a smile. Therefore, I am very confident that within a few short months, we could get your ultra-fasting aid pill to every corner of the city. By that point, you would be able to make a huge profit without having to do any of the grunt work yourself. Bai Xiaochun thought about it for a moment, and then began to discuss the particulars with Zhou Dao. 2 hours passed, and they finally agreed that the Celestial Sky Society would buy the pills for 300 merit points, resell them at a higher price, and then split any subsequent profits 50-50. Bai Xiaochun almost felt like he was taking advantage of them, but Zhou Dao seemed quite pleased. Smiling, they swore a Dao oath and recorded it on a jade slip, which they then sent to the Justice Bureau of the Starry Sky Dao Polarity Sect to make the deal official. Before leaving, Zhou Dao smiled and asked, Brother Bai, might I know your illustrious given name? Since we're partners now, I'd like to know a bit more about you. Bai Xiaochun stuck his chin up, waved his sleeve and loftily said, "You can just call me Apothecary Bai." After a brief moment of hesitation, Zhou Dao smiled again and then took his leave. In the following days, Bai Xiaochun went crazy concocting medicine. Furthermore, he increased his daily quota from 50 pills to 100. That was his limit. Every time Zhou Dao came to collect the pills, he would simply hand over 30,000 merit points. As for the extra money from the profits, that would come later, after all sales were finalized. Another 7 days went by in a flash. During that time, the Celestial Sky Society's hard work ensured that the ultra-fasting aid pill created a huge stir in the East District. The entire place was thrown into an uproar, and the cultivators there were going crazy. Although the prices were quite high, many cultivators bought them, and soon, the spirit food market began to drop. Before long, virtually all of the cultivators in the East District were talking about ultra-fasting aid pills. Furthermore, the Celestial Sky Society made a point of crediting Apothecary Bai. As a result, virtually everyone in East District knew that the ultra-fasting aid pills were concocted by Apothecary Bai, with the Celestial Sky Society cultivators being nothing more than dealers representing him. Bai Xiaochun found something odd about that, but didn't do anything to stop them from spreading his name. Eventually, Zhou Dao came to share the merit point profits, which was a sum of tens of thousands. When he said that such profits would only continue to increase, Bai Xiaochun got more excited than ever. Of course, what Bai Xiaochun didn't know was that after the Celestial Sky Society got the ultra-fasting aid pills, their apothecary spared absolutely no cost or effort to turn the 100 pills into 3,000. Because of that, the negative side effects grew even more extreme. Over the course of the past week, Bai Xiaochun had given them 700 pills, but they had turned that into over 20,000 pills to sell. Furthermore, they didn't just sell them in the East District, they also sent them to the West, South, and North Districts. As for Bai Xiaochun, there was no way for him to catch wind of that in the short time which had passed. For the first time, Bai Xiaochun had more than 200,000 merit points saved up. Excited, he finally decided to spend 100,000 of them to become an orange-robed disciple. The new clothing was very comfortable, and as he went around on his battle beast, he felt extremely grand. With his ultra-fasting aid pill, he could easily dominate everything under heaven. However, even as he proceeded along down the street looking down upon all creation with haughtiness, he suddenly heard someone scream. Shocked, he stood up on his battle beast and craned his neck to see a cultivator off in the distance, writhing on the ground as his flesh rapidly withered up. Before he could even react, more people in the crowd suddenly fell to the ground, screaming as their bodies began to wither. Bai Xiaochun instantly started to get nervous. What's going on? Is the city under attack? He immediately sent his battle beast rushing back toward his spirit abode. Along the way, he was astonished to discover that dozens of people were falling to the ground and withering up. In fact, he even noticed that one of them was a cultivator who had bought his pill in the past. More than ever, he now felt that something strange was going on. Unfortunately, things were only getting started. The next day, even more people in the East District were suddenly struck with incredible, explosive levels of hunger. More than 100 people were affected, and already, the news was spreading like wildfire. Although no one had died yet, all of them ended up with damaged vital energy. Some could recover after a bit of rest, but for others, the injuries were more serious. Of course, the wrath of the cultivators was aroused, and as people began to look into the situation, it quickly became apparent that everyone who had been struck with sudden hunger and gauntness, without a single exception, had consumed an ultra-fasting aid pill. In terms of how serious the injuries to vital energy were, nobody paid much attention. As far as everyone was concerned, that didn't matter. Furthermore, thanks to the whisperings of certain individuals, people quickly began to lay the blame on Bai Xiaochun. These ultra-fasting aid pills are fake. Apothecary Bai is a swindler. Damn it, things are already bad enough here, I can't believe someone would stoop to conning us. If there weren't strict rules here, I'd personally go and kill Apothecary Bai. More and more people began to fall to the symptoms. As for the friends and family of the victims, as well as the other cultivators who weren't affected, they all began to simmer with rage. Of course, there were people egging them on secretly, attempting to sway public opinion and stoke the fury which was building in the East District. The anger quickly began to transform into killing intent, and despite Bai Xiaochun being a gold core cultivator, this wasn't the river-defying sect. This was the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect, a place where he was a stranger. Furthermore, he had nobody to protect him, and as such, the rising anger being directed toward him filled him with a sensation of deadly crisis. It soon reached the point where he was nearly scared out of his mind. Thankfully, he had experienced similar situations in the Spirit Stream sect and the Bloodstream sect, so before anything could actually happen, he packed his bags and fled into the night. Now that he was descending from the high of suddenly having so many merit points, it occurred to him that he had been well played by the Celestial Sky Society. Damn you, Celestial Sky Society. I didn't do anything to offend you people. Gritting his teeth, he sped along under the cover of darkness, feeling very sorry for himself, and at the same time, extremely irritated. To have been schemed against and then toyed with in such a matter was a huge loss of face, and the anger in his eyes soon began to burn brightly. Of course, he couldn't bring himself to just flee without getting to the bottom of the situation. Not daring to go confront anyone from the Celestial Sky Society, he found some of the people who had been struck by side effects, and did a bit of research of his own. Soon, he understood the truth. The ultra-fasting aid pills these people consumed were altered. They weren't the pills I gave to the Celestial Sky Society. My pills might have some impurities, but the side effects should have been limited to minor damage to vital energy. Nothing that a bit of rest couldn't fix. Something that minor would be worth it in exchange for half a month without being hungry and having your energy drained. But the Celestial Sky Society changed my spirit medicine and made it far more harmful. They even reduced the effectiveness. Why would they do something like that? Gritting his teeth, he drew upon the power of his cultivation base to flee the East District and go to the North District. However, after arriving, it was to his shock that he found that there were also people there who had been harmed by consuming ultra-fasting aid pills. By this point, a thought struck him like lightning. I get it. The Celestial Sky Society is the most powerful organization in Sky City, and they control most of the shops and stores. The biggest profits in the city come from spirit food, and the ultra-fasting aid pill struck a huge blow to the spirit food industry. They came to me, not to work together to sell pills, but to completely destroy the reputation of my ultra-fasting aid pill. The more he came to understand what had occurred, the angrier he got. Well, isn't this interesting? They didn't use magic or try to assassinate me, they schemed their way to victory. Well, Bai Xiaochun can play that game too. You just wait, Celestial Sky Society. You just wait. Gritting his teeth, he settled down in the North District. After arriving in the North District, Bai Xiaochun rented another spirit abode. He also spent some merit points to get some food, and then sat down and focused on cultivation for a few days until the commotion in the city died down. Now that he was at the very source of the Heavenspan River, he could continuously work on his frigid school while evolving incantation, as long as he had enough food to make up for the energy drainage. The energy of heaven and earth in the area was majestic beyond description, and ensured that his cultivation was advancing by leaps and bounds. Although he hadn't quite broken past the frigid acolyte level, he was definitely far beyond his previous point. By now, he could emit shocking pulses of frigid chi out of his palm to form something like a projection of a person. That projection was one of the key signs of the frigid acolyte level, a frigid shadow. He also persisted in the cultivation of his undying tendons, making sure to spend time working on it every day. By now, he had completely finished his work on his second toe, and had moved on to his third toe. The patriarchs were right, he thought with a sigh. My cultivation is moving a lot faster here in the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect. Time marched on. 3 months later, the waves caused by the ultra-fasting aid pill incident had mostly died down. Virtually everyone in Sky City had heard that the whole thing was a scam, and as such, were very leery of any type of fasting aids. Because of that, it was impossible to sell ultra-fasting aid pills, and even if someone created a new type, no one would trust that it was real, and even fewer people would dare to consume one. The Celestial Sky Society had achieved their goal with minimal effort. In fact, they had even made a bit of profit in the process. Not only had the ultra-fasting aid pill been done away with once and for all of the blame had been placed onto the head of the now missing apothecary Bai. Of course, the Celestial Sky Society also apologized to everyone who had been injured because of the pills, and used various means to provide compensation. In the end, there were almost no negative ramifications for them. The only thing they regretted was that they hadn't managed to incite the populace to rise up and put Bai Xiaochun to death. However, as far as they were concerned, he was nothing more than a talented apothecary, not someone worth worrying about. It was a war that had been fought without unleashing a single magical technique, and Bai Xiaochun had been thoroughly defeated. That fact left Bai Xiaochun profoundly irritated. Had he lost in magical combat, he wouldn't have cared. But to have been defeated this way left him filled with fury, almost to the point of madness. Never before had he been humiliated in such a fashion, and he had even considering relying on the power of his cultivation base to go stomp the Celestial Sky Society. But then he realized that considering how large of an organization they were, even with his gold core cultivation base, they probably wouldn't be that easy to deal with. Relying on one's cultivation base isn't a true display of skill, he said to himself through gritted teeth. Wherever Bai Xiaochun falls down, that's where he rises back up. I can scheme too, can't I? With that, he took a sip of 100 Flowers spirit alcohol and then ate a mouthful of precious jade spirit rice. Those two particular brands of spirit food were relatively expensive and had been his favorite back in the East District. Thankfully, after arriving at the North District, he still had some left over that he'd bought earlier. Unfortunately, over the past 3 months, he had been forced to watch as his food supply dwindled and the merit points in his identity medallion were slowly eaten away. He hardly had any left now. I guess I was just living too extravagantly before, he thought. He was even starting to regret having spent those 100,000 merit points to become an orange-robed disciple, and also realized that it had been a bit impulsive to buy his crocodile mount. What am I supposed to do? He thought, scowling on the verge of tears. I can't sell ultra-fasting aid pills anymore. Don't tell me that I'm going to have to go back to living frugally and survive by consuming my own ultra-fasting aid pills. With that, he ate another mouthful of spirit rice, his anger toward the Celestial Sky Society continuing to grow. Half a month later, he was on the verge of completely running out of spirit food, and he had almost no merit points left. Sadly, he had yet to come up with an idea of how to earn more merit points. Finally, when he was sure that the ultra-fasting aid pill commotion had died down, he sighed, took a bath in spirit water, and then worked up a quick disguise so that people wouldn't recognize his face. Then he left his spirit abode. I guess I have no choice but to sell my crocodile mount, plus all of those magical items I bought. Probably that jewelry too. Although he was loath to do such a thing, he didn't really have any other choice. After jumping onto his crocodile's back, he thought about how grand he must look with his orange robe. Unfortunately, his bag of holding was virtually completely empty. Thankfully, crocodiles were one of the most common types of mounts in Sky City, so nobody connected the current Bai Xiaochun to the apothecary Bai of the East District. As he proceeded along through the North District, quite a few people looked at him with envy and respect. There were even some orange-robed disciples who looked at him that way. After all, only people with lots of money or power could afford battle beast mounts. That, coupled with the glitter of the magical treasures with which he festooned himself, all made him look very impressive. However, such gazes only made Bai Xiaochun feel worse. After today, he thought dejectedly, nobody is going to look at me like that anymore. Sighing, he decided to parade around the city for a bit longer. It was with great wistfulness that he toured the North District all the way until evening was about to fall. At that point, he gritted his teeth and decided to head to the Spirit Beast Pavilion. Along the way, he passed a certain alley where he happened to notice a familiar cultivator standing there. He was holding a banner in his hand upon which were written 3 characters. Master God Diviner. He was clearly much thinner than he had been when he had parted ways with Bai Xiaochun. His face was waxen and sunken in, his eyes listless. He seemed to be in very bad shape. Few people paid any attention to him as they walked past, and even when he called out to try to drum up business, people simply ignored him. Considering the bleak expression on his face, and his blank stare, it almost looked like his soul had left him. Bai Xiaochun was shocked at his appearance, and immediately felt bad for him. Patting his crocodile mount, he headed over in Master God Diviner's direction. Even before he got near, the crocodile's enormous frame cast a huge shadow over Master God Diviner, who shivered and looked up. The sight that met his eyes was a ferocious 90-meter-long crocodile looming over him. It had armor-like scales that glittered in the evening light, and the breath that escaped its nostrils as it breathed was enough to leave one's mind spinning. Atop the crocodile was Bai Xiaochun, clad in the garments of an orange-robed disciple, looking very grand, surrounded as he was by the glittering light of magical treasures. Master God Diviner was instantly shaken, and his eyes began to shine with unprecedentedly bright light. His experiences during the past few months had left him with a keen understanding regarding people like this. They were like chosen in Sky City, people with tens of thousands of merit points at their disposal, many of whom were very close to becoming yellow-robed disciples. They were the truly powerful figures in the city, people whom Master God Diviner had come to envy and look up to during the past months. As of this moment, his excitement was building at the prospect of getting a client like this. Eyes sparkling, he straightened out his robe and then clasped hands and bowed. "Brother, please wait a moment. I am your humble servant Master God Diviner, and if possible, would like to speak a word with you." Bai Xiaochun blinked a few times, then remembered that he was in disguise. Therefore, he pretended to think about the matter for a moment before finally voicing his assent. Master God Diviner was so excited that he was trembling. The truth was that he hadn't even prepared any words to say in a situation like this. The mere fact that someone had agreed to listen to him left his eyes brimming with tears of excitement. Mustering his courage, he told himself, Master God Diviner, Master God Diviner. You definitely have to please this fellow. Look at how impressive he is. If you make him happy, the merit points will surely come flowing in. Furthermore, you might even be able to convince him to take you on as a permanent diviner. With that, he put a serious expression on his face and then performed a double-handed incantation gesture, then peered at Bai Xiaochun as if to look into his future. Soon, powerful fluctuations began to roll off of him, making him look quite imposing. However, a moment later, his eyes widened, and he began to tremble. No, it can't be. This can't be right. Why are my divinations showing me him? Hold on, let me start over. By this point he was breathing heavily, and a look of complete incredulity could be seen on his face. He quickly performed another double-handed incantation gesture, after which his eyes grew even wider. He almost looked like he had seen a ghost. A strange expression could be seen on Bai Xiaochun's face as he looked down at Master God Diviner from his position on the crocodile. Obviously, Master God Diviner had deduced his true identity, which was no surprise considering that he did have some skill with divination. After all, he had divined information about Bai Xiaochun back in the Bloodstream sect days, and had always been fairly accurate. How did you get yourself in such a bad situation, Master Snort? Bai Xiaochun said, I thought I had it bad, but obviously, you have it way worse than me. Bai Xiaochun, Master God Diviner felt like he had just been struck by lightning. Trembling, he staggered backward. When he had performed the divination just now, what he had seen had been almost impossible to believe. Now that he recognized Bai Xiaochun's voice, he was left reeling in shock. Bai Xiaochun felt quite pleased to see Master God Diviner reacting in such a way. However, he cleared his throat and said, keep your voice down. Thus, this episode comes to an end. Remember to like and comment so we can discuss the story together. Until we meet again in the next chapters.